The purpose of this video is to show you how I usually mod weapons to make them powerful. I will be detailing all the stuff that covers basically what type is a weapon, to what mods can make the weapon an absolute powerhouse. There are lots to cover in this video, so it's best that cut any long introduction and begin with the guide. The first thing I always do before modding a weapon is determining its type. There are 3 types of weapons in the game. I'm not talking about primary, secondary, and melee here. What I'm talking about how weapon stats are distributed. Mainly, you can distinguish a weapon whether they are pure critical based, pure status based, or a hybrid type. These are just how I perceived weapons, but in my opinion, you can determine that it's a pure critical weapon if its critical chance is at least 25%, and its critical damage multiplier is at least 200%. A pure status-based weapon is those who have a 25% based status chance, while I consider those who got at least 20% value on both critical and status as hybrid weapons. If weapons have greater value, for example, they have 30% or more, then I consider them as monsters in their respective classification. They will provide you with red critical easily if they have 30% base critical. You can reach a 100% status chance and have room for more mod slots, resulting possibly for more damage if they have a 30% status chance or more, while they are beyond godly weapons if they have both 30% critical and status chance. These apply to all weapon types, and like I've said, this is only how I judge my weapon, and you can follow it or not. But squad leader, how about those weapons who fall below those percentiles? Where do they belong, or are they even worth modding at all? The truth is, I don't jump into the conclusion that a weapon is worthless when they have less percentage compared to my standards. These weapons are what I call special cases. Many factors can affect how you will mod your weapon, and it's not just looking at their critical and status chance stats. These stats may be the first things we look at, but we should also look at things like how fast it fires or how fast it reload. The fire rate does sometimes affect how you would mod a pure status chance weapon. Let's take for example Ignis Wraith, with a 29% status chance. It's safe to say that this is a pure status weapon if we based it on my category. However, since this is a beam weapon, and these type of weapons tend to have lots of fire rate, you might consider doing a hybrid build for this one. The high fire rate will be good for its critical stats, since this weapon fires fast enough to give us more critical proc before we empty a magazine. This is why you should not only focus on both critical and status chance of a weapon. Try to understand how the weapon works first, before deciding to go with a purely critical or status build. Although I can't determine which mods to fit in on my weapons at the first try, I do have this thing called mandatory mods for critical, status, and hybrid builds. Okay, let's try to discuss these mandatory mods I used for specific builds on my primary, secondary, and melee weapon. Let's discuss first primary weapons. Critical builds for primary generally use both Point Strike and Vital Sense. These are the mods you can consider as mandatory for critical builds. If the weapon is purely crit, then you can add Hunter Munition, which typically gives you decent /proc when you are using it with high crit based weapons. It gets even better if you are using it with a high fire rate gun. Other mandatory mods for primary weapons are Serration and Split Chamber. This mod is obviously to give your gun more damage, while Split Chamber gives you extra projectile that also gives out extra overall damage output. And there's what I call support mods for crit builds. Usually, I go with 90% elemental mods instead of dual status chance. Obviously, because you are better off increasing the overall damage of your weapon, than hoping to proc status on a weapon that has a very low status chance. In most cases, pure crit weapons can cope up with status and hybrid weapons right now in terms of high level viability, since we can put Hunter Munitions on the mix. It may have low status chance, but since we get to proc/per crit with this mod, it's very likely to melt even high armored enemies with pure crit builds. The pure status build, on the other hand, requires you to just put Serration and Split Chamber, and then go with dual status chance mods. In the past, 2 dual status chance was the meta builds. But since the status rework, it's now better to have at least 3 dual status chance mods on your build, to gain 2 elemental damage on your weapon, and as well as possibly go beyond 100% status chance. Status chance has a hard cap of 100% in the past, and it doesn't matter if you put a lot of status chance mods on your build, but now, beyond 100% means something. Having a weapon that has over 100% status chance means that you can proc status more often and a lot faster. Before we proceed further, Take note that shotguns are special cases when it comes to status chance. A shotgun that shoots 99% status chance would give you 35%, roughly, status per pellet. 100% status gives you 100% status per pellet, and with the recent status rework, the status chance of all shotguns has been buffed by 3 times or greater. The most meta pure status build right now is the combination of viral and heat element. Viral does give extra damage per proc on enemy health, while heat does lower the armor of an enemy, making these two elements a perfect combination against high-level armored enemies. The rest of the mods are up to you. Fire rate, or even some critical mods can be put on the available slots if the weapon does have 15% or more crit chance. However, it only depends on how fast the weapon can fire and give you extra damage from critical mods. And lastly, we got the hybrid builds, which I can say are the most used builds right now. Hybrid builds works for those weapons that have decent critical chance and status chance. I may have said before that 25% is my basis, but this doesn't mean that I will not bother making some exemptions. For example, if a gun have 20% crit chance, then a 25% status chance, I can consider this as a hybrid build candidate. In fact, there are special cases wherein a weapon has lower crit and status chance compared to my standard 25%, but I consider trying a hybrid build on it since both its critical and status stats are almost identically good. To mod these types of weapons, simply put point strike, vital sense, serration, split chamber, and then add 2 dual status chance mods. The extra slot is reserved for mods that you want on your build. You can add hunter munitions on this slot, or any special mods that will make the build perform better. Speaking of special mods, there are instances that I also use acolyte mods like Argon Scope for min-max purposes. To give an example, there are cases that I will use Argon Scope to push the critical chance of the weapon to red crit, without using any Riven mod. Also, you can use fire rate mods if you think that the weapon is too slow for you, or even use reload speed mods to boost the efficacy of a weapon in a mission. There are also cases that I use utility mods like Hush or Silent Battery that reduces the noise level of rifle and shotgun respectively. I usually use this setup if I want to try how good the weapon is with stealth frames. There are also times when I try out hammer shot on primary weapon. This mod is perfect for those hybrid monsters. This mod wasn't that good in the past, but with the buff to its status chance, hammer shot can make a difference right now, and can even greatly boost your overall damage output compared to other supplementary mods. Lastly, there are also set mods like the Vigilante set mods that will further boost your critical chance. These type of mods are better equipped on those pure crit or hybrid weapons. They don't actually add more critical on your base stats, but they will somehow increase the odds of your yellow crit weapon dealing orange-red crit numbers, or your orange crit dealing red crits. Let's move on to secondary weapons. The same concept as the primary weapon can be applied to your pistols. The only thing you need to do is determine what are those mandatory critical, damage, multi-shot, and status mods. Then also identify those supplemental mods that would make your pistol better. The damage mod counterpart of Serration on pistols is Hornet Strike. Multi-shot are better on pistols because they got both lethal torrent and barrel diffusion. The critical mods are also better, since both primed target cracker and primed pistol gambit gives out more critical stats bonus. Honestly speaking, I can say that pistol mods are much stronger except for those dual status mods. However, they don't actually mean that pistols overall are stronger than primary weapons. There are some, but mostly are not that powerful. In terms of mods that you can equip on your extra slots, there are a couple of pistol mods that you might take a look. For example, the Auger set mods. I know there are just a few which can benefit from the shield regeneration, but we don't equip this type of mod for the purpose of shield regen alone. Take note that Auger Pack does increase your pistol damage also, which makes it a viable option for that extra slot. There are also those mods that you increases certain amount of damage types on your weapon, not just elemental mods, but also physical damage mods which you might want to increase the slash damage of your weapon. The idea is, you want to increase slash so it will become more dominant among other damage types. This is good option if you have a good status pistol with decent amount of slash damage. Remember that pistols don't have the hunter munitions mod, and one of the best way to proc slash on your weapon is to increase its slash damage. There's also suppress, which is the counterpart of Hush mod. This mod works will be handy if you want to try your loud pistols with stealthy frames. And also, we got some punch-through mods. The idea of punch-through mechanic is to allow weapons to shoot through a set distance of material, whether this material is cover, objects, or enemies. You might not see a huge benefit when you use this mod in normal scenarios, but it will be handy when using it with frames that can group a crowd of enemies. Abilities like Nidus Lava, Vorban's Vortex, and Mag's Magnetize are just some of the prime example that will make you consider trying a punch-through mod on your pistol. Not just on pistol, but this type of mod is also applicable to your primary. So, if you happen to have an extra slot, and want to use the abilities I've mentioned earlier, then you might as well try out a punch-through mod. What about those faction-specific mods? Squad Leader, when do I use them? These types of mods, whether you are wielding primary, secondary, or melee, are great when you are fine-tuning your weapon against specific factions. It's basically used for min-max builds and often go on the extra mod slot of your weapon. Now that we are done with guns, let us proceed to melee. To be honest, melee is fun to use compared to guns. This is just a biased opinion though, coming from a Dark Soul fan who loves to whack enemies to death. But anyway, melee is much stronger because not only that most of them have good stat distribution, but also because the mods of melee weapon are far superior compared to guns. Also, melee weapons have combo counter which helps build up more damage output. And yes, melee weapons are also versatile, and can be modded in different ways depending on their stat values. First off, we got critical based weapons. When a melee weapon is pure crit based, then it can potentially reach red crits without any riven by just adding Blood Rush on the mod slot. In every crit build, you might consider adding these Acolyte mods as it's one of the best ways to boost your critical chance. The other mandatory critical mod is Organ Shatter, which boosts your critical damage. And then, what you need to do is give it supplementary mods. Just like on our guns, we will choose 90% elemental mods if our weapon is purely crit based. Then we got extra slots. Although I consider Primed Reach as an extra slot mod, still, I highly recommend putting this mod in all melee weapon. The improvement in range is just a must if you want to hit a crowd of enemies and build up your combo counter fast. Next, we have attack speed mods. Using either Primed Fury or Berserker is purely based on personal preference. Others would want a constant attack speed buff, from the first hit to last. That is why they consider adding Primed Fury. However, some loves Berserker because it does give out more attack speed compared to this primed mod. But, take note that this mod needs your weapon to have a high critical chance if you want it to be effective. You can say that your melee can always crit at 12 times combo multiplier because of Blood Rush, but it's always better to get the attack speed bonus as fast as possible, especially if you are using melee weapons like heavy swords which have low attack speed. For the damage part, melee mods are different than guns since sometimes you need to determine which is good for a primed pressure point build, and a condition overload build. Most of the time, primed pressure point builds are best used with a melee weapon which has a low status chance, or you are building for a heavy attack oriented build which we will discuss later, while condition overload is mostly used for fast attacks, and to those melee weapons that have decent status chance. Also, condition overload does scale better in high-level missions when used with fast attack builds, since the damage boost will be greater once you proc more status on the enemy. Speaking of status, the most meta status builds right now are Viral and Slash, or a combination of Viral and Heat. Viral and Slash works very well with almost every enemy type in the game, while Viral and Heat are good against heavily armored units, and it's best paired with a condition overload setup. I don't know if you notice this also, but almost all great weapons right now are modded with a combination of crit and Weeping Wounds elemental build. Just take for example Crone Prime, a hybrid melee weapon with decent crit chance and a monster status chance. In the past, you will need to add 2 dual status chance on this build, but right now, since it's easy to obtain 12 times combo multiplier, you should utilize Weeping Wounds to achieve over 100% status chance at max combo counter. The best part is, you have an extra slot to put elemental mod combo and form something like Viral for more damage output. And on top of that, you can add another mod that you like for your weapon. You can add either Drifting Contact for status and combo duration, or Healing Return to make yourself immortal. But do take note that Healing Return combo does sometimes require you to use the Narrowman Focus if you want to retain that combo counter at max level. That's an example of a fast attack build, while this is an example of a heavy attack build. Corrupt Charge is basically to get 2 times combo multiplier, which in return gives out more damage on your heavy attack. This is also useful when you decide to have Blood Rush on your build. Amalgam Organ Shatter is for critical damage and faster wind-up speed on your heavy attack. And most likely, you would want to use Primed Fury for the constant attack speed boost. Killing Blow for more damage on heavy attack. Then the sacrificial mods. Take note that you only need to put 2 sacrificial mods if you want to min-max the crit chance of your heavy attack. In short, use them when you want to achieve orange or red crits without spending any platinum for ravens. Lastly, it's best that you use elemental mods on pure heavy attack builds for more damage. There are also cases wherein you can combine heavy and fast attacks in one melee weapon. Just take for example this Nikana's. The idea is to build up your combo with the help of Exodia Triumph, so you can use up heavy attacks faster. This is a great setup in long endurance runs since you will be able to build up combo counter fast, and you'll be able to insta-kill a crowd of enemies with your heavy attack. Just a quick tip, most of the time, I take a look at the overall damage of a melee weapon. If it has decent overall damage, plus decent slash damage, then it's a candidate for heavy attack build. The last thing you should know is about stances and mods that can help you min-max your build. Do remember that stances matter right now. A pure crit-based weapon may not decent slash damage, but there could be combos in its stance that can force proc slash damage. You will need to know this so you can min-max your build. Just take for example Pennant. This weapon has low slash value but its stance has a couple of forced proc combos, namely, Threshing Grain, Calling Thunder, Lover's Farewell, and Terrapin's Rebuke. Knowing this will let you know what are the mods you need, and what are the combos you'll need to perform to force proc slash. In terms of supplemental mods, there are a couple of them which help you min-max your melee weapon. A good example is those Gladiator mods. This mod set will help you increase your crit chance per combo counter. There's also Quickening, which is great if you want to attain decent attack speed, and as well as build up your combo counter fast. There are lots of combinations you can do with your weapons because of the unique modding system that Warframe has. And take note, the things you have seen and heard in this video are just a basic example of how you can tell what mod will you equip your weapons. If you think I missed something, or you have a modding ritual of your own, then feel free to share it on the comment box below. Also, Horizon Zero Dawn giveaway will end soon, so you should check out the link on the pinned comment if you haven't entered yet. Thank you so much for watching. Squad Leader signing off.
This is the future. Human error. Evolution. This is the future.